I do want to give a trigger warning before we get into this episode that we talk about the subject of suicide. If this is something that you are not comfortable listening to, please go ahead and skip this episode. Welcome to Attunement with Courtney O'Keefe. My name is Courtney. I'm so excited to have you listening today. We have an amazing guest on, Margaret Kujawa, and she is an amazing woman. I met Margaret through Anita, as some of you may know from my first podcast, the Able podcast. I had Anita on and I met Margaret through her. Margaret and I have a lot in common, and as I'm sure we'll get into, she is an abstract artist and a designer of 25 plus years. We've bonded over design many times. And as I am in business, Margaret ebbs and flows as she evolves. So I'm really excited to talk about that as well. But Margaret is on today to share a story that relates to the root chakra. Margaret, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yay. Thank you for that. And yes, I love that we met through Anita and all the little intertwinement of the things that we
Yeah.
have in common. I love that because it's been super fun. It's been super fun to watch you evolve as well over the last few years. So thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to just chat.
Yes, thank you. And I learned about the story you're sharing today through actually a money mindset course that I took of yours. You are a manifester in human design, correct?
Yes, I am.
Yes. So that makes sense. You're constantly creating these amazing endeavors that are changing the world, I feel like. And your art is so beautiful. I love it so much, as we'll get into. But you shared this story as it relates to so many things in your life, but it's heavily related to the root chakra. And hearing your story helped me reflect on my life as well, on how certain events can affect your money mindset and your root chakra, as we'll get into. But if you could share a little bit about yourself and your background before we dive into the story, that would be amazing.
Sure. Well, depends. How far do you want me to go back?
Whatever you want, whatever you feel
Okay.
relates.
Okay, so if I give a little bit of my background, originally I'm from Poland. So I grew up in Poland up until I was 9. I grew up in a little tiny town on a farm. Well, my grandma had the farm. We didn't have the farm, but we had strawberries, all this stuff, right? So I grew up in a really tiny, tiny place, and I emigrated here with my parents, or met my parents here after 2 years of being without them. In to third grade. So I didn't speak a lick of English, right? I had to start from scratch as a kid that looked like a boy, by the way, because I had this bowl haircut, it was
Oh my goodness.
crazy. I remember being on a plane being like, and you little boy, what can we get for you? And I was like,
No.
oh, my girl, man, I'm a girl. Don't you see my little leather purse here? But anyway, so that's my little beginnings there, right? And then obviously huge story going on living here, but fast forward to, college, post grad school, I spent 25 plus years in a career as a designer, as a graphic designer, then a user experience designer, and creativity has been a part of who I am all my life, right? I've been an artist all my life, just like I'm sure you have been as well.
Yeah,
And technically speaking, we all probably are in some way.
totally.
But I spent so many years in a corporate environment as a designer. And then a couple of years ago, I decided that it was time for me to pivot and jump and leave. And that was super, super scary. I left my career and started my business, which at that time stemmed around manifestation, money mindset, and coaching. And I did that for about a year and a half, a year maybe. And in November, I pivoted again. And that was because, as also, we're constantly trying to listen internally to these nudges and these feelings. And perhaps part of me being a manifester in HD, I basically did an exercise that I do with my clients that is very common in this world, which is the whole, if you had all the means in the world, if money were no object, what would you be doing? What would your perfect day look like? Which is the basic question I ask when we work on creating an outcome, when we're focusing on a specific thing for manifestation. And when you do this all the time, you're like, I already did that. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like, I don't need to do it. And I was working with my coach, and she's like, okay, going through the logistics and questions. And this question came up. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I mean, even though I've done it, I've got the vision boards and you know.
Yeah.
So I started writing. I wrote my statement, what my perfect day looks like. And nowhere in that statement was I coaching
Mm,
or running a program. It all was fitness and health, which is one of my pillars, right? Like, I
yeah.
love that. That's a passion. But like, once I was done with my morning routine, it was studio time.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit, I need to be focusing on this part of who I am, because that's what's been the common thread
Yeah.
in my fabric all my life. And I keep on kind of like not listening to it. So right then and there, I told my coach, I said, I have to pivot again.
Hmm.
I have to shelve the coaching. I'd like to get back to it, but I have to focus on my art.
Yeah.
So like, that's kind of a little bit of a background, logistical background of me. I'm a mom of two,
Mhm.
but generally speaking, that's kind of a little
Yeah.
bit of who I am right now.
And even just like analyzing that before we get into your story, like fitness in general and being able to pivot like that, you have to have a stable root chakra to be able to do stuff like that. So I can't wait to get into what you experienced in your life and how you helped heal that, because you need that stable foundation to be able to make those shifts and changes in your life.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear your insight on that, because I haven't done a lot of like, I mean, I know about the chakra system for sure, but I
Hmm.
haven't done any like in-depth analysis. I actually had to look up. I was like, wait, it's stability and like what else is it? So like I asked
Yeah.
Chat GPT. I'm like,
I love
okay,
chat.
in relation to me and what you know about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm super, excited for that.
Yeah. So why don't you take us through your core experience that has to do with this chakra? Like what you're comfortable sharing.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess, and I can speak to it a couple of different ways, but one of the main, when I started this work several years ago, and specifically when I started digging into this work, and what I mean by this work is more of clearing blocks and understanding that we have, subconscious programming, and just getting into neurolinguistic programming, just like really
Mhm.
entering this world of like, what? you
Seriously,
know?
like there's so much, it's a rabbit hole. Everything is a rabbit
Yes.
hole.
Yes. Yes. So it was just, and the healing stuff. I had worked with Anita, right? So
Yes.
I've always been like attuned and in tune with like,
Hmm.
there's this other stuff out
Yes.
there, right? Like,
That
for,
impacts everything.
yes. Yes. And like, even in eighth grade for our like yearbook back in the day, which was like copied on a Xerox, my
Hmm.
friend and I did like horoscope stuff. I
No
went to a
way.
Catholic school and they let me do that.
Wait, that's amazing. Do you still have that?
I believe, yes, I actually do, somewhere in a box. It's
Oh
like,
my gosh, you're gonna
colored
have to send
paper.
me a picture of that.
Yes, I will. But it was like typewriter, borders,
Yeah.
X X X X X X X, because
Yes. It's like OG design right there.
that's how I was introduced to this, like in elementary school. And then manifestation and all that stuff. But then, like several years ago, I started to pick this back up again. And I started to work on my money stuff, clearing some money blocks and understanding what that is, and understanding what's going on underneath the hood. And this is where my story really came into light and started to kind of tie things together for me. And that is, I identified that one of my core woundings um is the fact that I have a fear of abandonment, which many of us do. First of all, I was never aware of like this abandonment issue, this abandonment scar that I was carrying, much less knowing where it came from. So when I started, what what came to light was a couple of different things. As I mentioned in the beginning, when I was 6 years old, my parents came to the States first before my sister and I. So they left my sister and I behind for 2 years with family. So the whole process of having to let my parents go really solidified this core wounding of abandonment in me
Yeah.
as a little kid, right? Which that also related to money. We won't get into that here. But so there was the base of this core wound. And, fast forward to regular life living, eventually us joining us here. As a kid, I grew up with a dad that was an alcoholic. He struggled with alcoholism. So, as a basis, my foundation for a dad, a masculine in my life, safety, stability, balance was founded in that relationship that my mom and dad had and the relationship that I saw, which was not stable, which was very, very much so dad not showing up,
Mhm.
on payday because he was out at a bar getting drunk and my mom would go searching for him and find him in a ditch somewhere along the way, on the way from the train with his bike. So like there was this relationship and this perspective that I had of imbalance and definitely not safety.
Yeah.
So there was already you know, the foundation was laid. I witnessed fights, all some crazy shit like, my dad grabbing the steering wheel as we are driving from my aunt's house on the highway and I was going 360 on the highway,
Oh,
right? Like,
jeez.
which
Yeah.
I barely remember. My sister remembers this. But I, as a little kid, blocked out a lot of the stuff. A
Yeah.
lot. And what was the nail in the coffin for me, which ties into not only abandonment, but self worth, because as a little girl, our self worth is tied into a lot of this, right? When we
Yeah.
want our parents' attention, when our parents, quote unquote, abandon us, you're like, I'm not worthy, right? Like, you don't want to stay with me. Like, you're leaving me. So that means you're valuing something else over me. So that means my value is less than money, which in our case was they were going to America to make money. That's what they always told us so that we could have a better life. So when I was 16 years old, my dad committed suicide. He committed suicide. And leading up to that event was something very scary. And, it's crazy when you think about it. You hear horror stories and movies and stuff, right? But as I mentioned, my dad was an alcoholic. Like a week leading up to when he decided to exit and return to light, as I like to say,
Mhm.
him and my mom had a fight. And it wasn't like some crazy fight. It was my dad. He was under the influence, and my mom had brought flowers home. It was a Friday night. My mom, for a living, when she came here because she didn't speak English, was in maintenance. So she cleaned office buildings downtown, Board of Trade, basically, is where
Mhm.
she was working. So sometimes, as I know, because I worked in corporate for so many years, when we get flowers in the office, we leave them behind. We take them
Yeah.
to whatever, the cafeteria or somewhere, right? You like, okay, I don't want these. These are out. So she's a huge flower lover, plant lover, right? Green thumb. So she brought just like 3 flowers home that she saved, right? And my dad completely, misconstrued it, made us think about it, and really started to get aggressive. So she ended up sleeping in my room on Friday. And then come Saturday, he was doing his own thing. He still was on kind of a binge, probably. He would hide alcohol, which we found out later. And Saturday, I had plans with my friends, and my mom's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to your aunt's house, but can you be home by midnight? Because I don't know what your dad's gonna do. So, like, can you just, can you be home?" And I was like, "Sure." My sister was out at the time, whatever. I have an older sister. So then I came home at midnight. My mom and I, got our stuff, whatever, went to bed. And I remember laying down and I hear my dad downstairs. Like I hear him pacing. I hear the floor would be cracking. We had hardwood
Mhm.
flooring. So it would be cracking. And all of a sudden I just got this feeling, right? Like I knew something was not right.
Yeah.
And then I hear the drawer open. And I saw it. Like I saw it in my mind's eye. I
Your
saw the
intuition, yeah, was strong.
I saw the butcher knife with the black handle. And I was like, "Mom, Mom, what is he doing? Right? And she's like, it's okay, honey. He's just, ignore him. He's whatever. Let him just be. Ignore him. And I was like, no, mom, like, what is he doing? And then I hear him taking the footsteps coming up the stairs. I hear him on like the corner of the stairwell, the stair, because obviously I walked up those stairs thousands of times to get to my room. And I just bolted out of bed and bolted toward my door and put my back against it. And luckily, I had this huge ass dresser that was made of MDF. So it was super heavy. So I was able to put my foot against the dresser, my back against the door, and hold the door as my dad was trying to jab that butcher knife in the door, which obviously, who knows what would have happened
Yeah.
had he gotten in.
Like wild. So wild.
But I, in all of that adrenaline pumping, my mom was like, dumbfounded.
Mm-hmm.
We still had, stationary phones back then. So I just grabbed the phone with the long cord and
Yeah.
dialed 911. And he heard me dial 911. And then made his way back downstairs. I heard him put the knife away and he went back in his room. So, by the time the police got there, he was just in his room. And I remember seeing, the police take him. He was on the floor, he was pinned down as they handcuffed him. And it was so surreal and so strange because my dad also wore like a man gown for sleeping. So it was like in his man gown, like dragged out. So, it was super scary, but at the same time, like surreal.
Yeah, like out of body. I
Yeah,
can't
it was,
imagine.
because I mean, you didn't have time to process what was happening. Like, you're like, oh, my dad just basically tried to murder me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, who knows what would have
Yeah.
happened. So when he came home the next day, because they kept him for 24 hours, he didn't speak to us or my mom or anything like that. I think he just said to my mom that she tried to turn us against him. And so like that whole week leading up to his exit, he kind of kept to himself. He didn't go to work. And then I remember coming home. I would be afraid to come home at this point. So I would always wait for my sister. One time I forgot my keys and I remember knocking on the door and he came like, I had little glass panels
Yeah.
to the front door and he was just like, what? Like, so like my last memories of him are so like violent.
Yeah.
And then the night that he took his life, I truly believe that I heard when the stool from underneath him fell over to the floor.
Oh my goodness.
Like you instinctively,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what that was because at that point, my sister's boyfriend was staying over as well because she was scared too because my
Mhm.
mom worked nights. And my mom already had told my dad, hey, we're going to get you help. Like for now, I think it's best that you go stay at the other house because at that
Mhm.
time my parents had a couple other homes they were renting. So there was a room that he would be able to go to. So we're like, we're going to do this. We're going to get you help, but you're going to have to leave the
Yeah.
house. Like it's not safe. It's not safe. And so then came Thursday night and I remember sitting in my room and through the vent, it was like 10:30, 10:35. I heard something fall over. And I was like, oh, that's probably like my sister or her boyfriend downstairs, in the kitchen or something like that. Like, and I went to bed. And then the next morning when I woke up, my mom my mom was already downstairs and I went downstairs. She's like, your dad's not in his room. Go check, see if he's downstairs in the basement. So I just went down the steps. And so they were on the side, and then you would look to like your left, and there would be like whole family room,
Yeah.
right? And then if you turn the corner further, would be the door to the laundry room. So I just kind of glanced down the
Yeah.
steps. I didn't even go down fully. I just looked. I'm like, oh, he's not on the couch. Like he's not down here.
Mhm.
So then I'm like, he's not down there, mom. Like I don't know where he is. Maybe he's in the garage. So I went back upstairs to my room and I continued to like finish up my school stuff and grab my stuff. And in the meantime, she sent my sister back down there.
Jeez.
Yeah, and she fully went in. And then she found him hanging in the laundry room in front of the sink and the machines, and I heard her screaming. And then I ran downstairs, and my mom and her were down there already. And I saw him basically, standing because his body had been there for a while, which would kind of, be in tune with the timing of hanging there
Mhm.
for several. And I remember having this thought, I won't forget it, like the thought of that I would not help him, even if he was breathing
Yeah.
at the time, because I was so scared. I was so terrified of him. So yeah, the impact of going through something like that was not really visible to me until a few years ago.
I mean, it's very traumatic. And thank you for sharing that because there are a lot of people who go through things like that and don't talk about it or even look at it. And you're very brave to share that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I can't imagine what that would do to a child. I mean, you'll kind of share that with us, but I mean, how that would affect you at that time, and then even later on in life, we suppress all of these things, and it affects us in so many ways, and we just don't know. I would love to hear how you kind of came to realize that and how you started to work through those things.
Yeah, so I absolutely did not realize it back then, right? I didn't understand why I spun out of control. And what I mean by that is at that time, as a 16-year-old girl, I was dating someone, my high school sweetheart. We were together for a long time. And, fast forward a few months, like he ended up cheating on me with one of my friends,
Jeez.
high school drama, stupidity. And I remember one time Kim coming over and me begging him to stay, knowing that she is waiting literally outside of my window for him. I had zero self respect
Mhm.
or self value. And when I put together the fact that, and this was, a few years ago,
Yeah.
wait a minute, when your father attempts to murder you, that kind of impact probably made me feel worthless,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
right? So I was like, holy shit. I had zero, zero. I didn't care about myself because of, and I'm not blaming my dad, right?
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
that essence, but absorption, but I am sort of having,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean, yes.
as a kid, but it was something that I had never looked at up until a few years ago. And then when I made that connection and just those light bulbs started to go off down the line, my relationships with other men, and I just I was dumbfounded by what impact it had on me.
Yeah.
The programming that came with
Hmm.
that. Uh, and I
Different
slowly
patterns. Like, I can't. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, like seriously, just moments of my marriage, right? Like I'm divorced now, but like moments of my marriage where I was like, "Oh my gosh, like no wonder we both were like this." Like I couldn't understand why I always felt that like there was this wall between me and my husband. And like it's like I wanted to get through, but I couldn't. I couldn't. Like I always had this armor around me,
Yeah.
this protective layer, right?
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh shit, like what I went through with my dad, I had to protect myself. I had to
Absolutely.
protect myself.
Absolutely. And as a child, like we see and we learn from our parents, that's like our structure, our root, quite literally what we come into the world learning and seeing from, and having to heal not only like what older generations and parenting has done to us, but something that your parents physically did to you. I can't even imagine. Like, how did you work through healing that trauma?
So I think like once I identified, my the connections, and what worked for me is I created a timeline.
Mm, mm-hmm.
of the events in my life.
I
I literally
remember
have a
seeing this. This is so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so I created a timeline and I identified and I started that by looking at the masculine energy in my life and how it actually is tied to your self-worth and self-love because that is tied to money as well. So when I created that timeline and my feelings and emotions that are associated with these events, it was just crazy. The not coincidences, the similarities in these events. So what helped me to heal this stuff, well, identifying it,
Yeah.
right? Like for me, having the clear picture and understanding the common thread, that's just how I function as part of the designer in me, right? You
Yeah.
understand that,
Yeah.
right? Like we need to create the flow, the wireframe or whatever you want to call it. But I think for me, what I really started to gravitate to, well, I started journaling, right? Like I've always done that. I've done the meditating. So all of that played a role in healing. I think one of the bigger impacts was somatic breath work
Interesting.
for me. And that is because doing breath work allowed me to connect to something deeper within me.
Yeah.
So that was one like modality if we're speaking of modalities. But I think what oddly was another thing that helped me heal through love and to open my heart up was when 2 years ago I had a directive from my spirit team that I am to be working on my heart.
Really?
But yeah, I had a
I
directive.
love that.
Um, and it was funny the way it came up because you gotta love spirit and you have to love how things come up. I remember being at I was at an event with who was it with? Danny, what is his last name? Shoot. Awaken is his event, but I forgot his last name. Anyway, he does also like somatic deep breath work at his events. And I remember going to one of the sessions, like whatever, day 2, and my friend and I were getting ready. And my friend is like really the opposite of me in many ways. Like, she'll wear heart jewelry where I'm like, I can't wear hoop earrings that are hearts, like I was very like,
Yeah.
even like back then saying like, love you, or I love you, or in the comments, using hearts everywhere. I'd be
Yes.
like, oh God, I was very masculine. I was so my masculine. So we went to this event and by the time that we were at this event, like I had work on even the masculinity part, but it still
Yeah.
felt uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, girl, I'm not wearing no hoop earrings that are in the shapes of hearts. Like,
How
what the hell
funny.
is that? So, like hearts, right? So
Yeah.
then we go to the event and we run into, someone we met the day before and it's like, hey, 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 la, 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 la. And I look at her and I look at Johnny. Johnny looks at me and the girl's like, yeah, I decided to wear these heart hoop earrings. I just want to kind of tune into my feminine. And I'm like, oh my
No
God.
way.
Yes, 100%. I was like, oh my gosh. Because she's like, yeah, I'm so in my masculine, la, la, la,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, I hear you. Like, this
Yes.
is funny. This is funny. But it didn't stop there. We go inside and we go sit down. And Jenny, as she always does, she talks to everybody and their mama.
Mm-hmm.
She's like talking to the person next to her. And then she's like, oh, that's my friend Margaret. And I, leaned over because it's a row. And I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. I look at her. What kind of earrings is she wearing?
Stop it.
Hoops that are in the shape of hearts.
Oh my God. I hope you have heart hoop earrings now.
I don't. I might be ready. Instead, I had a a heart necklace is what I went with.
Oh, I
I was like,
love
had
it.
a heart harm.
Yeah.
I'm like a charm.
Wait, this is wild.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, we're healing the heart. We're working on the heart, which like tied in with my dad because I was like doing all that, connecting the dots, connecting how to love myself and
Yeah.
understanding self-worth and how that's all connected. So yeah, so then the heart work began, which is a whole different story, which consists of me falling back in love with my ex-husband. Like,
I don't think I've ever heard that story.
yeah, which
Wow.
allowed me to understand what unconditional love is, which is also a beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, crazy.
Yeah.
It honestly, I feel like I also started healing with the root, addressing your story, like what you did, really like looking at the shadows in the face and be like,
Mhm.
this is what happened. This shaped me, whether I like it or not. And it's so funny that you say you really felt it in your heart because my heart chakra was like the first thing to like bust open for me. And that's why I have like a giant heart chakra tattoo.
That's
That's
awesome. I
really
didn't know you had a
weird.
heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was, like I said, I really allowed myself to be led in that experience and to see like where it took me. Like, I had to apologize to my ex-husband. Like I started
Wow.
with an apology to my ex-husband.
And that's how that opened up.
That's how it started. Like before this whole heart hoop stuff started,
Yeah.
I knew like for some reason, and what I mean by apologizing, I knew that for all the years that we were divorced, he always blamed himself for the entire divorce. And that's because, his family did that. Like,
Yeah.
kind of were like, oh, you effed up. Like, Margaret was good, you effed up. So I took ownership of my side of the street and actually had a conversation with him on Thanksgiving of all days,
Wow.
where I was like, hey, just want you to know that I played a role in the demise of our marriage, that I take the responsibility of what I did. It's not all on you. And that's like when I started to understand the programming. That's where like NLP
Wow.
came into my purview, and understanding programming, truly understanding how like it could infiltrate and impact everything. So like it was so clear to me, our marriage, and like how and why I was the way I was.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then the whole heart thing happened, and then the whole journey, it was like a 2-year journey with him of like literally falling back in love with him, having my heart broken,
Yeah.
going through heartbreak again.
Wow.
But there was a moment where I had to tell him how I felt, not to go into like the full detail of the
Mhm.
story, where I literally went and told him how I felt. And for the first time in my life, I was able to truly see him for his being. Like I was looking at him and I was like I could see the layers
Yeah.
and to see like his heart.
Wow.
And I was like, wait a minute. Is this what unconditional love is with someone else other than your kids? So I was like, oh
I
my
have chills.
God. Yeah, it was
That
crazy. I
is
was like,
wild.
it was super, like, I'm so grateful for that experience, because I finally got to understand what it meant to love someone else unconditionally. I never knew that I didn't know what it
Yeah.
is. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So like,
Wow.
everything fell off, like all the times that, things that he would do that annoyed me, or things that he would say, and I would get all like huffy and puffy.
Mhm.
It no longer mattered. I was like,
That's
I
really
see.
powerful.
Yeah, it was super amazing. It was super amazing. So that was also part of like my directive and my healing, when it comes to my dad, and then allowing myself to forgive him, because for a long time I was angry.
Oh, yeah.
I was angry. I viewed him as a coward for taking the quote unquote easy way out.
Yeah.
Right. Which at the end of the day, it's like, well, is it really an easy way out? Like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it's really easy to pull the plug.
That's
And
like a whole separate conversation.
yeah. So, yeah. So, like, and then that allowed me to understand, like, okay, what was he going through? And how desperate was he really?
Wow. I mean, you're
You
like
know?
completely zooming out of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at it as like, okay, he's a person, he's a being. And then like add to it the whole process of which I believe that we pick our journey
Mm,
here
mm.
on earth. I believe that we do have a hand in that, before we're soul or light or consciousness tied to mass, to a body.
Yeah, I believe that too.
So like, understanding that, okay, he had some hand in picking this, and was there suicide in that path? I don't know, because
Yeah.
I've heard like different things about this too,
So have
like where,
I. Yeah.
you know, so I started, yeah, I zoomed out and looked at it from a whole different perspective. And that really allowed me to detach from it
Yeah.
in certain ways. Yeah.
This is a random question, but have you ever experienced like spiritual communication with him?
With my dad, well, so it depends how deep we mean. Yes, I have a symbol for my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So, like communicating in that way, symbol wise, if I ask a question or if I am somewhere where I'm like, am I supposed to be here or things like that? And like a peony is my symbol for him. So, like in that way. But besides dreams, the connection that I had with him was when I was doing somatic breath.
Really?
Yeah, so and it was my first time doing this, and it was the coolest experience because at that time my grandmother had just passed away in August, and I think this was in December. I was doing some breath work stuff. It was at an event, and he came, and Jesus came.
Wow.
So it was really cool, and the way they came was my grandma took my hand and she had me lay down in her coffin and she had me watch me from her perspective. Yeah.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
wild.
It was crazy. So she let me know that she knew I was there.
Yeah.
That was her way of telling me. I knew that that's what she was doing. And my dad was with her through doing this. So like that was the closest. I think I've never like had him say anything to me,
Yeah.
any words, but anytime like I'll get a reading done or anything like that, they're always there. It's them too.
Really?
Yeah, my dad's always there.
Wow.
But it was, yeah, it was super crazy. And then like Jesus, I saw Jesus with
I
his
love
like
that.
beaming, which I was like, it's the sun. Oops, I just
Yeah.
hit my mic.
Literally the sun.
Yes, yes, literally, the sun is the sun.
Yeah. Oh my God, how fun.
Yeah, so it was super cool, super cool. I've had my ex-husband's mom come through when doing somatic breath work,
Wow.
which like with him when I was doing all this healing, it was another session. She came through. Okay, so I'll have to give a backstory to this,
Yeah.
like real quick.
Yeah.
I'm big into music, like music inspires me and stuff like that, right? So I happen to be out of nowhere, and I talk to her sometimes too, right? She's passed, obviously. And out of nowhere, I remember getting an urge to put on Take My Hand by Dido, which is like a song from the early, I think, 2000s or
Yeah.
something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even remember like how I, heard of the song or whatever. But I mean, I like Dido. I used to listen to her, so I'm sure
Mhm.
like whatever. But for some reason, I was like, okay, Take My Hand. So I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard this in forever. Like, okay, da da, doing work.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, I go to this somatic breathwork event, and we're doing breathwork. So like music's loud, right? You're working because it's a lot of fucking work to do.
It really is. I've only done it once and it's wild.
Oh, it's so much work. Like I
It's a
dread it.
body.
Yes.
It's body work.
Yes, it's like a workout. It's like
Intense.
you
It's
dread
really
getting on a
intense.
fucking bike
Yeah.
or running up a hill.
Yeah.
So we're doing it, and it's like dark. Like my eyes are closed and it's dark, and I'm like, "Are you here? Are you here?" And then what comes on?
No
Not that
way.
song yet.
Oh, okay.
Another song of hers. Another song of hers. And then that song. And I was
Wow.
like, "No way." And she's like, "Take his hand." So she was telling me, "Take his hand," meaning her son's.
Mhm.
And what I saw in that was us healing his child versions. Like there's many versions of him,
Yeah.
and we were healing him. So it was like this whole crazy thing. Like, whoa.
You're like generational curse breaker next level.
I hope so, right?
Wild.
But yeah, yeah. So it was like a 2-year time frame of like all this happening, and it was so cool, so cool. So yeah, I tried a lot of different modalities to really like work through that, but I think the biggest thing was really identifying for me was identifying that timeline and really seeing identifying emotions with each of those events and really understanding how and, where I could start to work on these core wounds,
Yeah.
which I'm still working through
Oh,
them.
yeah.
I've,
Always.
identified others that are attached to it that I'm still like, okay, we're going to tackle this. Like I'm going to be tackling some stuff now as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a constant practice, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I love following you on social media. I feel like you would never know what you've been through because you share so much light. Your artwork is light. There's so much purpose behind it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk about that. But overall, in general, from this experience that you went through, what would you like listeners to take away from your story?
Well, I think the biggest thing would be to take a step back and detach, so to speak, from your situation so that you can see the full picture,
Mm,
so that you can identify what truly happened and be open to healing, be open to little directives like what I went through with hoop earrings in shape of a heart, right? Like probably a few years ago, I would have dismissed that completely and would have been
mm,
like, whatever,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I was open to that. So I think, as hard as it may be to really look at yourself in a mirror and look at those parts of yourself, it really is freeing, not to sound generic, but it
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
It's like, don't get me wrong though, it was hard.
Oh my God. Honestly, and it's interesting when you're saying detach. What I'm envisioning, and let me know if this is what you mean, when you are in triggering situations, it's not actually the situation that's triggering you, it's your childhood. And pulling back from your current situation and looking at what happened in your past is the most important thing.
Yes. Yes. And how it
Yeah.
connects. That's, that's what I constantly do now. I constantly will evaluate.
It's so hard though.
My God.
So
I
hard.
mean, I'm telling you, when I was going through the thick of this, which is when my heart was breaking, right? When I
Ugh.
fell back in love with my husband, which
Mm-hmm.
meant we got involved.
Yeah.
Like there was involvement, which we kind of explored with, kept on a between
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, close friends and family. But I had to go through the process of learning that he eventually started to date someone like that I did, that he didn't have enough like respect to tell me. So then I was like, holy shit. Which knowing all this stuff, even though I was in it, I mean, I literally took a day and I was bawling my eyes out and I was like, this sucks,
Yeah. Yeah. Which you need to do.
I was like, I don't even want to go outside, how did I get here? But then when you got yourself together and I'm like, wait a minute, if we really think about how, we are the main character in our reality, right? We are the main player, we are the creator, we are the captain of our ship. And if the world is a reflection of who you are being on the inside, truly being your energetic blueprint,
Yeah.
and that blueprint is projecting outward,
Mhm.
and then the world is reflecting to you the manifestation in different forms, events, beings, people based on your energetic blueprint. Margaret, you created this. And
That's
it's
deep.
like, oh,
That's deep.
dang. Yeah, why did I create this?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's still self-worth.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, we need to dig deeper.
Mm.
We need to
Mm.
continue to dig.
Took me to church with that one.
Ah,
That was good. Yeah, I mean, totally. And it's you constantly have to be evaluating your situations like that, which is a lot of self-awareness and takes a lot of
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for
You're welcome.
sharing everything. You had so many good nuggets in there.
Yay.
And tell us a little bit about where people can follow you and your artwork because I just love your current collection that you're sharing.
Yay. So my main spot would be IG.
Mm-hmm.
So that's at the Margaret Kujawa. And I'm also on Facebook and TikTok, but IG is the
Yeah.
main thing. And it's the same name on the other ones, except Facebook is just Margaret Kujawa without the "the." And my artwork, my collection is called Organized Chaos.
I love it.
Yeah, and the purpose of that is we're all organized chaos, right?
For sure.
it's the whole, you know, pieces crumbling, falling on the floor, and then you're picking up the pieces and taping them down and moving on and leaving behind those that don't work. It's this whole concept and the way I create my pieces. So they're basically small paper sculptures.
Yeah.
They're paper relief sculptures, technically speaking. They're 3D and they're random pieces that I have collected that I cut, and I just kind of randomly work with them and create whatever's going to create. Like I don't sketch it out unless I'm obviously doing like, I can't think of the word of reproduction. Thank you. I'm like, what is it?
Yes.
Repeat.
Yes.
It's like, when as a designer where you're like, when
Gosh.
something happens in real life and you're like, come here and see. Like my
Yes,
brain
yes.
will do that, right?
I love that.
Which means undo. You're like, oh wait, I can't undo this coffee spill in real life with
No.
a Command Z. But anyway, so unless I'm doing a reproduction, then I have templates. But otherwise, I just allow the artwork to lead me. And they're bold, vibrant colors because to me, color is life. I've always been attracted to color. And this was another example of how things just happen because this collection really just literally just happened one day when I was working on paper mandalas, which I've made those too. Like I was in my little studio workspace and I just was picking up random pieces of paper and I literally picked up like a stack and I did one of those, where you're like evening them out on the bottom. And then I looked up and I was like, this looks good.
I love that.
I like this. So then I was like, well, what is this?
Yeah.
And I went down a rabbit hole of organized chaos.
I love it. And you can see one of the little ones in your background there.
Yes. Like,
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I've just been experimenting, and this is Gravy, by the way.
Oh, I love it.
Gravy. He's got a story too. But yeah, so I've just, I've been creating and letting it lead me. But what's funny though is I realized I'm like I get attached to them and I'm like, oh, how am I going to let them go? Which
You
is
put
another
a lot of
thing.
work in them.
Yeah, but it's like it's so weird. Which I'm like, how? I'm like, is that something I need to work through? I'm attached to my pieces of
to my artwork.
I can't let them go, which means I'm like, is that lack? Is that lack?
Oh my God. That's too good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on finishing this collection up, this particular series, and I'm planning a pop up.
How
Which
exciting.
I felt like I wanted to do this month, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh. Well, we'll have to be on the lookout because I need to come to that.
Yes. Please.
How fun. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Margaret. I enjoyed our conversation so much. Go give Margaret a follow and we'll be looking out for whatever you're doing next because
awesome.
I'm always there for it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Visit ablealchemy.com to download your free chakra journal and to learn more about Able Alchemy. This is a place where your dreams and reality align through services like tarot and astrology readings, sound bath sessions, and intuitive branding for businesses looking to align with their manifestations and purpose through soul-led studies such as astrology, business energy analysis, and chakra color theory. Follow along with Able Alchemy on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Please rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for listening and see you next time.